of the problems can be solved with the blockchain industry. Then we also saw the offering which host games have. So let us very quickly look at what those offerings are. So like I said, the first one is the host.games dApp, which is the decentralized application. So we are building a decentralized application wherein anybody can come on top of our platform and host a game, host a private mini casino for their friends and family at zero setup cost. So in this game, they don't they make nearly 99% of the revenues out of this, and this leads to a viral growth of the platform as explained in the explainer video. So we are also solving some of the biggest problem in the blockchain gaming. So currently, what we have realized is, although there are a lot of very good public blockchains available in this space, because it is so early in the development of the blockchain space, we don't really have any blockchain protocol which is very suitable for gaming. So one of the things which we want to do is build a gaming infrastructure and a protocol which helps gaming companies like our own selves and the others was one of the things which we wanted to achieve. So that is why we are building the host gaming protocol. It is a private permission based protocol which uses a proof of authority consensus mechanism which helps a faster throughput and very low transaction cost. What we are tying up with our protocol is also we will help a whole ecosystem around it by helping any companies, any other decentralized app which want to build on top of us by providing them with a very good large gaming developer friendly SDKs, which are the software development kits, a very big gaming centric community which involves both players, hosts, operators. We would tie up a lot of licenses on top of it so that these applications don't have to go through that headache. Then we are also having an off-chain scalable solution called as the Play Channels, which will help to scale any applications or multiple applications in a very big way. Also, lastly, to bring in more transparency in the system, we have a pluggable, provably fair RNG, which is central to the gaming logic of any developer, which any gaming company, which any developer can just pull it from the protocol layer itself. And finally, we are going offline. So, like Goa, there are a lot of other cities around the world where there are casinos. So we want to tie up with a lot of these casinos and have an offline partnership wherein we use something called a host casino chip. So if you go to a participating casino in the host gaming network, you can actually exchange your host tokens for some casino chips, and you can play in those casinos. By doing this, we are providing the casinos with player liquidity as well as money liquidity, and in return, we get adoption for our token as well as revenue in the participation of the casinos. So there is a wide utility of host tokens within the host gaming ecosystem. It starts with the host protocol, where the native currency of the protocol is the host token. For our D app, we have all the games that run on our decentralized application would be in host tokens. All the fee paid as well as revenue earned by operators as well as developers and hosts will also be paid in the host token. And finally, we have a lot of utility for host token in our offline participating casinos as well. So this is our team. It's a stellar team. We have been working in this company for over 2 years, and we have built a very good global team. One of the most important things which we have taken is, apart from the relevant experience in the gaming as well as blockchain industry, we have chosen people who are very passionate about this industry. This industry being the gaming on blockchain. And we have people from around the world as well as the top B schools from around the world as well as top engineering colleges. And our total full-time team is more than 25 players, 25 people. And then we have some stellar advisors as well, from gaming industry veterans to blockchain pioneers. We have casino owners as well as directors of some of the biggest companies in gaming, as well as people who have sort of helped shape the blockchain companies. All of these advisors, amongst them, have either build or help other people build some of the biggest companies in gaming as well as blockchain. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Didn't Tom Cruise also have a movie on Post Protocol?
It was just
So just a moment before you go. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. We're now in time for the next panel around can ICO be the new IPO? I'd like to invite on stage Ian Bolina. Can we have you on stage, please? Oleg Ivanov. Can we have you on stage, Oleg? Can you have a big round of applause as well, everyone? Can we have our own local boy, Jason Fernandez? Friend of mine, Vishal Nigam, also CEO of Coins Exchange. Can we have Abhishek Pitti, CEO of Nucleus Vision? And finally, to moderate, I'd like to invite Ajay Chakravarti, Director of Marketing, Nucleus Vision. Can we have a round of applause for everyone?
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thanks to the Goa government for having us here and making this happen and putting this entire event together. And thanks to all my eminent panelists for being here on stage and sharing their opinion, thoughts, and views with everyone here. So I'm sure most of you would have heard of the term ICO, and just to kind of give you a context on why this is a big rage. In 2017 alone, the amount of funding that was raised through ICOs is around 3.7 billion, which is more than what VC related funding has happened in the last 2 to 3 years. They put together. Okay, so that is the amount of potential, and that's the kind of market this is opening up, and that's why the hype is around ICO, and that's what we're going to kind of talk about and address why this is so important, what is the hype, and then can it really replace a conventional IPO? Okay, so I want to open this up to the panel. We'll begin with, just take a few moments to introduce yourself and your opening comments on will an ICO, will an IPO be replaced by an ICO?
Hello. Good evening, everyone. My name is Vishal Nigam and I'm the CEO of Coins Exchange. Let's quickly put my thought. So we're all from India, right? Although we have our business outside of India because of the few regulatory facts. But the term ICO, which was coined a few years back and have been successfully running the show across the world, is initial coin offering. I know you all must understand, or those who do not from the industry don't understand, but I'm pretty much sure people do understand IPOs, right? How many of you understand IPOs? Let's raise hands. Okay, and how many of you understand ICO? See, the answer last. Now, all right, I understand. Great stuff. So the basic difference is that you still in IPOs you just put your equity to public and they buy shares and you raise money. In ICO it happens the same way. The only difference is that in IPOs you have a regulatory framework to see the progress, to see how things are going to work. In ICO it doesn't work right now. ICO is going to be the new IPO. It's one of the best mechanisms for the startups right now to raise funds, for sure, where you don't have to literally go to hundreds of the VCs to evaluate your idea or project and get funded, but you really put your project to the public and have the audience evaluate it and put funds. Although in the ICO, the funds are right now more focused on the crypto side, so you accept BTC, Ether, or whatever cryptocurrency you can accept. In terms of IPO, where you just raise the fiat currencies. Now, the difference that we are still troubling is that there are so many ICOs that it's almost impossible for us to evaluate. And hence the criticism is coming into play that okay, ICOs can be the new IPO, but how it's going to work? How do we evaluate those things? How we evaluate projects? So that's one thing. Yes, it's going to be new ICO. A lot of ICOs are going to happening even in next few months. We are going to do an own ICO for exchange. A lot of projects are doing their ICOs to raise funds, not just for for money, but how to build the ecosystems. We call them tokens. Every platform would have its own token, which might be a utility or security, which we might talk a bit later in this time. But yes, ICO is going to be successful. It's just a matter of time how things get regulated, how the governments of different ecosystem and geography are going to regulate it and make it more worthy for people to invest and invest smartly.
Thanks, Vishal. Ivan, your initial thoughts?
Yeah, thanks.
Sorry, Oleg, sorry.
No worries. So do we just continue, right?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, my name is Oleg. I come from the Russian part of the world. Basically, we're a company called Crypto Bazaar. We do two things. We're probably one of the largest funds in Russia that invest in ICOs, early stages, usually in projects as close to core technology as possible, like your protocol layers, security, connected projects, and so on. Second thing is we have a large community and events division, and we run events, run hackathons, and so on and so forth. In terms of your question, of course, it's very hard to say, right? In a way, because there are so many similarities. But on the other hand, I think we're just if we look at the IPO market and ICO market at the moment, I think there's a lot of confusion at the same time because the stages at which projects are raising money in using these two vehicles are very different. Because when we talk about IPOs, we're talking mostly about large corporations already with stable revenue streams, very transparent in terms of accounting and so on. And on the other hand, when we talk about ICOs, we're talking about venture. So this is really about usually the starting point of, traditional again, starting point of some business. And this is in some sense a replacement or maybe an add-on to your traditional crowdfunding, right? Which we also knew for a few years before, ICOs and blockchain became a big thing. So in general, there are a lot of similarities, of course, but I think the fundamental difference right now is right here, just the stage of the company.
Thank you. Yeah, would you like to please introduce yourself and then give your initial thoughts? Not that you need an introduction, but for the new ones.
Hi, my name is Ian Belina. I'm with Underdex Advisors, who are an ICO investment and advisory firm. I'm going to say no. I don't think ICOs are the new IPO.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I guess if you go to Wall Street, an IPO is something you do or a company does after it's gone through numerous stages of funding, from Series A all the way to different rounds of financing from different investors that have vetted them and qualified them. And after achieving numerous milestones, they give them more money. And the IPO is basically kind of like this final blessing, so to speak, kind of like graduating. Right? An IPO is basically saying this company is now world class. It's a Hall of Fame or all-star company. So for an ICO to have that same label, when 90% of these ICOs have no business doing ICOs, I don't think that's the case. I think if anything, ICOs is really the new seed funding.
Sure. Yeah. Shall you want to go ahead?
My name is Jason Fernandez. I'm a CEO and co-founder of Aetoken. We're a Malta-based company building a blockchain payment solution for the affiliate marketing industry. Coming to the point at hand, whether ICOs could be the new IPO, essentially there's a lot of hype around ICOs, but if you actually look at the numbers, ICOs have only raised $5.6 billion in 2017, and that in comparison to an IPO where $196 billion was raised by IPOs last year. So you're looking at like 1/40th. ICOs contributing to 1/40th what an IPO would do. And also I think it's not a really valid comparison, because with an IPO you actually own stock of the company. You actually have some degree of say in how the company progresses. When it comes to an ICO, you're essentially owning tokens, and you're owning essentially utility tokens. And I guess a more apt comparison would be the security token offering, because with that you actually own part of the company, and in addition a lot of the STOs actually have to go through the same processes to get to the that a normal company would get to the IPO, the same filing and stuff like that. So there's a lot more scrutiny with STOs as opposed to ICOs. So I don't think it's an apt comparison, and I think it'll take a while. I think STOs will probably be the next IPO.
Thank you. Abhishek, we just concluded a ICO recently, and I think only panelist who has actually finished an ICO. So from that perspective, what do you think?
I think,
Is it
okay? Okay, my perspective is I quite agree with Ian perspective, but it depends. From a purpose perspective, it's all about even IPOs or ICOs. It's about creating liquidity, right, for the business. I think the right way to look at it from an ICO perspective, it's the new early stage funding source, like Ian said. I think it's seed capital, and maybe even late stage capital. The amount of money the early stage companies are raising is probably enough to get them to Series B, Series C, or maybe Series E. So, but at the same time, in the IPO market, we have this regulation that is looking for key characteristics about how many earnings, how much revenue, how much XYZ, which are inherently absent in the companies who are doing ICO. So I think whether ICOs would ever meet the standards of IPO, I don't think so. If you are really capable of doing an IPO, why would you do an ICO, right?
correct?
So I think I clearly agree with what Ian has shared. That I think it's a new VC, new early stage capital, and take you to a point where you can do a real IPO.
Thank you. Thanks for your initial thoughts. I think very interesting perspective saying that it's not it can't replace an IPO, but more of a predecessor for an IPO. But what's interesting to note is that hitherto, all such seed funding opportunities, whether it's seed or Series A or Series B, were mostly available for funds, for institutions to invest, and not so much as a crowdfunding. But now that opportunity has been made available for the general public also to kind of get in, and hence get a chance to make exponential profits and so on. That's an interesting trend. So having said that, but if I may begin with you, Ian. I know you said some time before, and then you even said it today, is that 95% of all the token sales that they don't really have a use case for a blockchain, right?
Yes.
Right. So and given that, and how do you look beyond a white paper, and how do you kind of look at an opportunity to invest? Can you throw some light on that?
Yes.
As an interesting project, yeah.
For us, in terms of doing research on a project, the first thing we look for is there an actual product? Is a team, have they shipped code? Have they built something tangible? Or is this just an idea? So we check for something, either a testnet, a mainnet, an alpha, a beta of the product, to make sure the team can actually execute on the idea, and not just trying to raise money for a research project, right? So, because I think most people lose money in ICO investing by investing in research projects. The next thing we look for is the team. Is the team competent? Is the team well known? Do they come from credible backgrounds? Or are they just random people from a small company in the middle of nowhere asking for $40 million? Why do they deserve $40 million? Right? So imagine you're Google, and would you hire this employee? That's kind of the mindset we have. So once you check the product, the team, and the people working with them, the advisors, the partnerships, then you look at the actual ICO itself, the token metrics. How much money are they raising? Is this an undervalued project? How many tokens are they planning to mint? So taking all these individual data points and then creating a single holistic grade that tells you how good this project is, then having the caliber of what exactly you have to achieve to invest in the project.
Right, thank you. And as a follow-up question, you've been kind of a torchbearer for the investment community. I mean, millions of people subscribe, and then including myself. And you've been kind of the voice of the community from an investment standpoint. So would you like to share some thoughts from a community standpoint? I mean, how can, what is their voice? I mean, what is that they want to kind of send as a message to all the companies that are doing a token sale? How do they kind of benefit by getting into this, right?
So what's my message to companies having
Yeah.
an ICO?
Yeah.
Oh, I have so many messages. Raise less money.
Okay.
I would say almost every project out there that's trying to raise money, just raise half of what you need. Don't raise money just to raise money. Only raise money to achieve your actual milestones. Right? So for example, there's a project that emailed me one time, and I got so mad because they said that, hey, we'll just do a survey and see how much interest we have. Then based on the demand, we'll change our hard cap to be just 1/3 of that. So that way there's some FOMO on exchanges. And as a person who goes through so many ICOs every single week, I just find that so disrespectful to investors. Because how do you not know how much money you need to achieve your milestones? Are your milestones based on just a survey on what the sentiment is on a weekly basis with investors? So I don't think ICOs should do that. Actually, sit down with your business, right? Typically, they call this a business plan, right? And you have some financials, right? And as opposed to, kind of going back to what Avi was saying, as opposed to maybe having a Series A or Series B, maybe the ICO is that bridge that kind of gets you through maybe not being able to meet the standards of a typical VC for a particular stage of financing, right? So would you go to a VC and ask for $40 million with just an idea? Especially if you have no background or history. Maybe if you already had a prior exit with a PayPal or Google or whatever, maybe somebody will back you blindly because you're already proven, right? But if you're just somebody brand new doing an ICO, you have to think about all this while having the ICO.
Yeah, I just want to take a moment now, go to Oleg. Oleg, I mean, you had a very, very successful fund. And I want you to throw some light on what happens before an ICO. We just directly got to an ICO, but throw some light on the pre-sale. I mean, like what Ian said, people must be coming to you with ideas and concepts for asking for an investment, and then I want your perspective on how do you evaluate those projects and how do you see how do you identify a winner, basically?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I guess we're a little bit biased, right? I mean, all the people here sitting in the panel, and the more time you spend in the industry, you sort of you tend to go pretty much the same way as the whole league of I don't know, professionals, whatever we call the whole people who are staying in here. We're trying to click together. We're trying to look at the same things and pretty much use the same measurement techniques this way or another. So it's a good and a bad thing, of course, but it doesn't mean that the whole industry actually lives this way. So one of the things that I wanted to say that there are funds like ourselves. There's funds that are much bigger, much more successful than ourselves all over the place. There is a tendency right now that more funds are mostly focusing on infrastructure projects like the blockchain, the protocols, the maybe sometimes exchanges or something like that, and all the rest being a little bit undervalued because there's this feeling that most of the business applications on blockchain would actually mostly resemble this some form of a loyalty program in the business, really. And then you ask yourself a question: do they really need like a blockchain there for the loyalty program or not? I think there was a research saying that it was about 70 to 80% of all the ICOs that have been launched with business case applications. This is all about loyalty programs this way or another. And it's not good or bad. It's just that's the way it is, right? And now, can investors make money on that? Yes. It's like when you look into some other fields that are not related to blockchain, right? There's so many investors. There are some individuals. There's angel investors. There's guys who specialize in real estate and so on and so forth. So here you find the same. So you have the guys who spend most of the time in the blockchain industry. So they would tend to stick to the to the core technology as close as possible. And these are of course, the most, the sweetest spots, right? The sweetest deals, and they're hard to get. But then there's tons of other small projects that you can find within your community. I mean, one of very strange examples that we had last year in Russia actually is a company called Sandcoin. I don't know if you probably heard of it or not. It's an absurd example, right? But what the guy said is that, okay, and he was very open. So he says, I own a quarry, outside of Moscow. Here's my papers, I really own them. So I have like 100% of sand there, and by the way, for like 2-3 years, I'm actually selling it, on wholesale. So right now I want to dig it and sell it. So, but I can't do it now because I need equipment and so on and so forth. So if I only had the sand and sell it now, the cubic meter would cost around like $5 or something. So what I'm doing now is I'm pre-selling these cubic meters to you for a price of 90 cents. And then, as I develop my project, basically this amount of cubic meters which are tied into the sand coin, the token itself, would appreciate. And I mean, it was funny, but the guy rose, I don't know how many, like $2 or $3 million, which in like traditional approach, sitting in Moscow, he would never even come close to this amount of money. And everybody made money. So, I mean, and the project is flying, investors are happy, and I mean, so in this case, we're a little bit biased, like I said, with us as funds, so we're trying to get closer to technology because that's where we see all the, the highest returns and so on and so forth. But then there are some business applications in crowdfunding, right, where blockchain is being used to raise capital for traditional businesses, and it brings returns as well.
Sure. Thank you. So a lot of people are making money, a lot of projects who don't really need a use case for a blockchain are also trying to raise a lot of money. That's what Ian mentioned. But having said that, anyone who's come across ICO, we can't ignore the fact, and we can't ignore the entire stigma around it, around all the scams and people kind of the projects that raise money and don't exist anymore and so on. So I'd like to come to you, Jason, on that. I mean, your startup also kind of addresses kind of a model where you address payments between people, which is based on an escrow model, right? Do you think that kind of a format can be extended also to an ICO where you hold the tokens and then you release it to the founders after they reach a certain milestone and so on?
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, that's already being done, right? So a lot of ICOs, when their founders will have locked-in tokens, where their tokens aren't really, they can't really use it. There's actually a lot of there's a few platforms where a founder has to go through several basically benchmarks before funds are released. So that's another way of doing it, of course. One of the things I think we've spoken about a lot over here is crowdfunding, and ICO is like sort of this crowdfunding. But I think what's happening right now in the industry is that the vast majority of funds are not raised. Well, not say the vast majority, but a large portion of the funds are actually raised from private sales, like way before you actually even get to the public sales. So a lot of, like at least in our case, a lot of our investors are actually institutional investors. So we have like venture capitalists, venture capital companies, firms, etc. Those are the ones that are actually investing in a lot of these ICOs. So a lot of the dumb money that was in this industry has long since gone. Like you look at the coin market cap, it's shrunk, and that's because a lot of the coins that didn't deserve to be there have gone to zero. So a lot of sophisticated investors are coming in, and actually institutional investors are looking at at companies in the pre-sale stage, way before they even get to the public sale. So there's some degree of control there because you have people that are already VCs, that are already angels, that are already like in the industry that know what's going on. So it's not quite like a crowdfunding situation where like it's thrown open to everybody, because for the most part, by the time you get to that point, you've already passed your pre-sales and you pretty much already raised most of your things. So if we are able to raise, let's say, twice of our minimum, that would be a good place to go to an ICO after that. So a lot of companies are doing it that way.
Thank you, Jason. So I'll come to you, Vishal, with this. I mean, now we've spoken about projects and then what kind of money they need to raise, having a relevant use case for a blockchain, approaching the right investors and everything. I want to come to you with where does an exchange fit into the entire ICO roadmap for a startup?
Right. So one of the most important part of any token is to be traded. Like, why do we invest when they say we make 5x, 10x, 50x, or whatever, right? It's only going to happen when you raise an ICO and an exchange is listing that token, where people can literally trade that token with some other assets. If there's no exchange, you will never be able to trade that. And that's why one of the most important part of any ICO, any token basically, is to find an exchange who's going to list them. And people are looking for the top 10 exchanges, for example, Binance, CoinEx, or Bitfinex, or whatever else you have. The reason is that because they have volumes, right? If you get listed there, you know that you will be traded, and that's been an exchange is only going to list you the way Ian said that. If we're going to invest in an ICO, we have to evaluate that. But at its ends, even the exchange evaluates an ICO before they list them. And then it's really important because if this ICO, which looks so shiny, if they list it and the token went down, the credibility goes to the exchange because that's where the money has been actually traded. So the exchange plays a very critical role post an ICO because if an ICO is not getting listed, you will not get the value ever. And you will see a lot of ICOs and tokens which hasn't been listed, has raised money, they've gone and they are what we call them as scams.
Thank you. Abhishek, I'll come to you. One thing that we haven't addressed till now is the role of a community in as your roadmap to an ICO, right? And then we have built a community for Nucleus Vision. So I wanted your comments. I think we are out of time, but I wanted your quick comments on the role of a community, okay, and how a company needs to plan post an ICO. What's the roadmap after that? What happens basically after you raise all of that?
I think very, very important. I think the biggest value out of the ICO is not the money. I think it's the community. We have built one of the largest communities at the time. We continue to have their support. When we reached out to the community to make business referrals, they gave us 1,200 referrals in almost 38 countries. That's the kind of reach we had through our community. We could hire people who had the relevant skill sets. I think a lot is misunderstood from the pros and cons of ICO, but if you don't build a community out of the ICO, you haven't really done. And even if you raise money, you have lost half the value. Because really, if I were to build that marketing effort post ICO, I would literally spend millions of dollars, or maybe even then it's not possible. Building a great community is, I think, should be one of the core objectives of any ICO, because that will give you people who will evangelize your project, people who would be your support in the community, people who will create liquidity in the local markets, people who will make business referrals, people who will promote your project for little or no tokens. That is just massive. This is like you just hired 78,000 to 90,000 people who are promoting your business. How does that happen? In real businesses, it's impossible. You can't get that many people globally to promote. We were visible in 200 countries globally as a company. Our community size today is still somewhere around 78,000 people. And we are very proud of it.
Thank you. We're just short of time. I'll just quick remarks. I think we have not even covered the basics. I mean, there's a lot of ground to cover when you talk about ICOs. I think what we have tried to do is not answer and explain what is an ICO or will it replace an IPO, but our objective really was to kind of give you a glimpse to only increase the number of questions for you so that you can go ahead and find answers and then you get inquisitive about it and then learn more about it. Yeah, do we have time for a Q&A? Yeah, please, sir. Please introduce yourself.